Hello and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World, live from Warsaw. I'm your host, Marie Casey. After speaking with his Lithuanian counterpart, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has decided to extend the closure of the Polish-Belarusian border until mid-November. Poland closed its border in September, while Russia and Belarus held joint military drills. Lithuania recently limited access to its border crossings after balloons carrying contraband cigarettes had come in from Belarus.
At the Bobrowniki border crossing between Poland and Belarus, the empty lanes will remain a daily sight for at least the next 2 weeks. The same goes for the crossing in Kuźnica. The crossings, which remain closed since September when Russia and Belarus held joint military drills, could have been opened earlier. But given the recent developments in Lithuania, the Polish government has made a different decision.
Yesterday, I spoke to the Polish Prime Minister on the phone. We had a very detailed, in-depth conversation. And we decided that the Polish Prime Minister will delay the reopening of the borders with Belarus and will coordinate further actions together.
Last week, airports were closed after hot air balloons carrying contraband cigarettes from Belarus flew into Lithuanian airspace.
No hybrid attacks will be tolerated in Lithuania. We will take harshest measures to stop such attacks.
In response to these incursions, Lithuania closed its borders with Belarus for most travelers.
The meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping has failed to produce a breakthrough in regard to Ukraine. However, Trump announced an agreement with China on rare earth metals and slight tariff reductions. Less friction between Washington and Beijing also bodes well for the global car industry.
As Russian forces push harder into Pokrovsk, a major logistics hub in eastern Ukraine, there were no good news for Kyiv from the Trump-Xi summit. Trump said he spoke for a long time with his Chinese counterpart about Ukraine, but no decision has been announced.
We agreed the sides are, locked in, fighting, and sometimes you have to let them fight, I guess. Crazy.
Both leaders did not discuss Chinese purchases of Russian oil, which Beijing is the biggest consumer of in the world right now. Experts aren't surprised. Ukraine just wasn't the most important topic of these talks.
Ukraine itself was not on the top of the agenda. For China, it's good to keep this conflict ongoing as the way it is in the status quo, because it weakens Europe, it makes it more dependent on China, it makes Russia more dependent on China.
The biggest announcement coming from the meeting is a 1-year-long pause in the trade war, with the U.S. slashing tariffs on Chinese goods by 10 percentage points to 47%.
Every year we'll renegotiate the deal, but I think the deal will go on for a long time, long beyond the year.
In exchange, China agreed not to restrict exports of rare earths.
All of the rare earth has been settled, and that's for the world. I mean, worldwide. I guess you could really say this was a worldwide situation, not just a U.S. situation.
Experts caution this doesn't amount to the end of the trade war, but merely to a truce, and the proper trade deal is still far from certain.
This is not peace deal, this is not the trade deal. The trade deal might happen in April. I'm a bit worried that it will not happen in April, but this is just the preliminary meeting to set a path for April talks.
That is not to say the world won't benefit from the truce. Beneficiary number one, the automotive industry, which has been hit hard by turmoil around Nexperia, a Dutch-Chinese chip manufacturer.
They are delivering pretty much to all the European manufacturers, so everybody who's buying Nexperia chips is actually affected, and this seems to be pretty much all of the European manufacturers.
Nexperia has been at risk of the tightening of U.S. tech sanctions, an offshoot of the U.S.-China trade war. But after the Trump-Xi meeting, the tightening has been postponed for a year, with car makers breathing a sigh of relief.
Chinese officials arrive in Brussels on Thursday for talks with the EU over rare earth exports. The meeting follows Beijing's decision to pause export controls with the US, a move that came after Washington agreed to cut tariffs on these critical materials. Let's go live to our EU correspondent Angela Skujins in Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. What can we expect from today's talks?
Yes, so the talks are actually tomorrow, scheduled for Friday. We know that that high-level delegation from Beijing will touch down here in the Belgian capital. The European Commission have only clarified that they will speak to their technical counterparts, aiming to find a solution to the long-held issue of the EU's dependency on China for those 17 critical rare earth minerals. We're talking about copper to lithium, the key ingredients for the development of naval vessels, fighter jets, as well as wind turbines. And while this news coming out of South Korea, the South Korean city of Busan, is potentially good news for Brussels, the European Commissioner, Deputy Chief Spokesperson Olaf Gill, is trying to temper expectations for what could come out of that meeting tomorrow.
We don't comment on trade negotiations between third countries, but of course, in principle, we welcome any development that removes barriers to global trade flows.
That is the European Commission Deputy Chief Spokesperson Olaf Gill speaking there off the back of questions from reporters. TVP World did ask him what time this meeting is expected to take place on Friday. Couldn't reveal the details, as well as who exactly is coming from China to have these high-level discussions. But what is clear that despite this good news coming out of Busan regarding these simmering tensions between the US and China, this could just be a bump in the road for the EU. It still needs to solve its issues when it comes to its vulnerabilities, relying on China for those critical rare earth minerals. Hopefully we'll get some good news tomorrow, but also in the future when it comes to the EU deepening those trade relationships with other partners.
Angela Skujins reporting to us live from Brussels. Thanks so much. Zaporizhzhia, home to Europe's largest nuclear power plant, was heavily shelled by Russian drones and missiles overnight into Thursday. Dozens of people were wounded, including children. We also have reports of fatalities. As Moscow continues waging its war of terror against Kyiv, killing and wounding civilians, experts warn Russian aggression could soon escalate beyond Ukraine's borders.
In the southeastern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia, Thursday night was disturbed by violent Russian attacks.
I read online that ballistic missiles had been launched from Crimea, and I realized they were heading our way. There were 4 explosions, and then the 5th missile struck right here. I held my child close. Within seconds, the power went out, dust in the air, and children started crying. I was terrified. It was truly frightening. Some people are still trapped under the rubble. My neighbors lost their apartment.
Zaporizhzhia is where Europe's largest nuclear power plant is located, but the facility is under Russian control. Just a day before Moscow launched overnight attacks on the area, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency warned that maintaining peace in the vicinity of the plant is crucial.
The situation continues to be very, very serious. And the fact, as I was saying earlier, that we needed to mediate between the two sides to obtain a silence or a deconflicting or a truce.
But to many Ukrainians, peace seems like a distant dream.
Only if we return to our country's pre-war borders, we can say that we have a chance of living in peace.
Until then, residents of Kyiv are forced to seek shelter in the city's metro system.
Of course it's cold here. Of course I'd rather be at home.
But instead of getting closer to peace, experts warn Russian aggression could accelerate and soon reach beyond Ukraine's borders, towards Estonia and Latvia. But instead of getting closer to peace, experts warn Putin's aggression could accelerate and soon reach beyond Ukraine's borders.
He doesn't believe NATO will invoke Article 5, and I strongly believe that within the next few months, he'll try to test Article 5 by doing some sort of small incursion.
As Russia launched strikes on Ukraine overnight, Poland scrambled its jets to secure its own airspace. The airports in Radom and Lublin have also been temporarily closed to ensure that military aviation operations proceed without interference.
These measures are preventative in nature and are aimed at securing and protecting Polish airspace, especially in areas adjacent to regions of Ukraine currently under attack.
The strikes also damaged energy infrastructure, causing power outages across the affected regions.
American sanctions on Russian energy companies Rosneft and Lukoil have caused shock in Hungary, and the country's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is now scrambling for a solution. He is due to meet with President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. on November 7th. Our Hungary correspondent Andrew Sweeney has more on what this means for the country's economy.
Well, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán will be hoping that his meeting with US President Donald Trump at the White House on November 7th will win him some sort of a reprieve from the upcoming US sanctions on Russian energy companies, including Rosneft and Lukoil. Hungary is particularly dependent on cheap Russian energy imports, and the country's energy minister, Gábor Csepek, has said that Hungarians face an increase in price of petrol pumps of between 10 to 20% should the sanctions go ahead. This is all coming, of course, after the fire at the Danube refinery in Százhalombatta near Budapest, which saw 40% of Hungary's ability to process oil. This all comes after the fire at the Százhalombatta refinery near Budapest, which processes most of Hungary's oil. Now, Prime Minister Orbán has already said that he's working on ways to circumvent the sanctions. We don't really know the details so far, but he has hinted that not all Russian energy companies are subject to these sanctions, and that may well be a way around them. However, that idea has been given short shrift by US Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who posted on Twitter X saying, "Buying Russian oil is not a good business deal. It is funding terrorism, death and destruction to Hungary, Slovakia and Turkey. If you think we're not watching your efforts to undercut US sanctions on Russian oil, you are mistaken." Now, Prime Minister Orbán and President Trump have enjoyed warm relations and they are ideologically very similar. However, you could forgive Prime Minister Orbán for feeling the heat at this moment. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
The Dutch have voted, and the result could reshape the political landscape in the Netherlands. After one of the tightest elections in years, the centrist Democrats 66 are tied with Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom, setting the stage for complex coalition talks and a possible generational shift in Dutch leadership.
In the Netherlands, dawn broke with suspense rather than celebration. With nearly all votes counted, Geert Wilders' Freedom Party holds a razor-thin lead over Rob Jetten's centrist Democrat 66, separated by just around 2,000 votes. Both parties have secured 26 seats in the 150-member parliament, but the far-right PVV now stands slightly ahead in interim results. It's a result that keeps the Netherlands and Europe guessing. The final count will determine whether Wilders can claim symbolic victory or whether the momentum shifts to Jetten's progressives as coalition talks begin. For Geert Wilders, the man who once brought down his own government over migration, the result feels like a setback, but not a defeat.
I would have preferred a different result. We're still the second and perhaps even the largest party. We'll have to wait and see. It's a neck-and-neck race now with D66 to see who will emerge as the victor. We haven't seen a definitive result yet, but I would have preferred to see 30 or more seats, of course.
At D66 headquarters, optimism filled the air. The 38-year-old Rob Jetten framed his win as a break from division and a promise of cooperation.
What I personally noticed during the campaign was that our positive message resonated with many Dutch people. How can we say goodbye to the Wilders era and truly seek cooperation again to move the country forward? It's not only a fantastic result for D66, but also for several other parties that have also embraced this politics of hope and connection.
But not everyone felt victorious as the result poured in. Frans Timmermans announced his resignation after his Green Left Labour alliance underperformed.
It's also clear that for whatever reason, I haven't been able to convince enough people to vote for us. So it's time for me to step back and hand over the leadership of our movement to the next generation.
In The Hague, voters said the result marks a new chapter.
I think it's a great change for the Netherlands. Finally, there's a progressive, constructive party that's in the lead, and other parties as well.
My mood is fantastic. I'm very excited that we're going to have the first homosexual Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and also one that is combining all the positive forces.
No, it's fantastic. It's an unexpected victory at this scale, and I think it's a vindication for progressives all over Europe.
Coalition talks will take months, but the message from the voters seems clear: a turn away from the politics of protest toward the politics of possibility. A narrow victory and perhaps a new direction for the Netherlands.
Hurricane Melissa has killed 30 people across the Caribbean. The storm is one of the strongest hurricanes on record in the Atlantic. After battering Jamaica, Cuba and Haiti, it has weakened and is moving now towards Bermuda.
Hurricane Melissa has left destruction and misery in its path. The aerial images best show the scope of the devastation. It was a Category 5 hurricane, the highest possible classification.
At the moment, I'm trying to clean up to see what can be salvaged, and then we'll see what happens.
It's not easy to lose everything you have, the little you have.
Everything happened quick. The floodwaters rose in mere minutes.
At one stage, I see the water at my waist, and about 10 minutes time, I see it around my neck here, and I make my escape.
It's the worst hurricane to ever hit Jamaica, where property and infrastructure damage is catastrophic.
I don't think there's any single soul on this island was not affected by Hurricane Melissa, whether it was their roofs being blown out or their gardens.
77% of the country is without electricity. There is work that's going to be done to bring that up as quickly as we can, but that is a large number.
The area where Hurricane Melissa struck is considered the breadbasket of the Caribbean. That's why the region is now facing a looming food security crisis, on top of all other issues brought about by the storm.
That's all for Midday Report. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for much more on TVP World. Goodbye.